I'm so excited for this year to discover new and old stories and to collect and share them on my channel. Last year was a pretty good year, but I want to do better this time around. So we're going to be talking about the books that I read in January, which is the start of the year, and I feel like I started off pretty strong. As much as last year was a good year, I want to do even better in terms of the quality of books that I'm reading. What I want to do this year is to read more things that can entertain me, but then also help me learn a little bit about the world, the systems around me, as many things as I can do. So I want to read more moving literature this year. I definitely want to push myself to read more nonfiction, and I want to find some more humorous books with like quirk. Every year is an opportunity to refine your taste, so to speak. That's what I'm trying to do. If you don't know, okay, so really quickly, if you could just comment, it doesn't even have to be like your favorite book. If you could comment a book that was like most disappointing of 2024, or a book you're most looking forward to that's going to come out this year, or like a strong hot book take that you have, I would really appreciate reading it. I love when people interact with these videos. Any one of those, or if you could recommend me, I'm looking for a good thriller that feels like it's based, like I want to read a thriller that feels like it's nonfiction. So if you have one of those for me, one of those recommendations or one of those things that I have mentioned, please let me know. Please give this video a like or a comment. Interact with my channel in any way, shape, or form. It helps me out a lot. Thank you. What I look for in a book is something that is thrilling, something that has humor in it. If it can make me laugh as much as it can make me cry, I'd like that too. A story with a theme of grief in it. My top books, I think, are very in tune with just like sadness. I like something thrilling. I used to think I only liked thrillers because I could keep up with the story, but it's like I like books that kind of keep me on my toes. I like books with social commentary. It could be explicit or implicit, but it's gonna kind of lean towards explicit. Let's get into the books that I read this past month in January. So the first one is How Can I Help You by Laura Sims. I found this book by simply just going to books recommended under my husband, which I loved, by Maud Ventura, which is a 5-star for me. How Can I Help You this is a psychological thriller based on a runaway criminal who starts a new life with a new identity, and it's going good for a couple years until one day a new coworker walks in, somebody who she doesn't know but reminds her very heavily of the past life that she lived. We kind of see her unravel a little bit as time goes on with this new coworker. It was a very quick read. Although it did take me the month, because I feel like I picked it up and put it down, and would read like half a chapter at a time. It's one of those things. But then when I really just locked in and was like, just finish this, it was something that I feel like I could have read in one sitting if I just dedicated myself to doing that, which is hard because I'm a slow to medium reader. You guys are gonna be like, don't you have a husband? I did have a husband until he didn't get our cat and give her some attention.
Christian!
This book was kind of an easy to read, fast-paced, typical thriller in the way that this was basically just plot driven. This was not something that you really kind of invested into the characters about, because the characters are creepy and meant to kind of put you on edge. So I'd say give this a 3-star. And honestly, I used to do these things where I would talk about how like my rating scale was in relation to like how I would relate it to food or like dining experiences. And a 3-star to me is like baseline fast food. A 5-star to me is like you have a personal chef who makes everything for you the perfect way that you like. A 4-star is like dining out. So a 3-star to me is like, that was enjoyable, that was good, but I can't live off of this. This isn't like value to me, but it was so enjoyable that I'll do it again, and I'm gonna return back to it, you know? Okay, so the second one, They Have Called Us Exceptional by Prachi Gupta. This is a memoir following Prachi Gupta, who is a second-generation immigrant I want to say a second generation Indian American, but she spent some time in Canada, so I don't really know how she would identify. It's based on her experience mainly with the model minority myth. Her and her loved ones' relationship to exceptionalism dramatically impacted her life in many, many ways. On the surface, they're a very successful family. The father is a doctor, the mother is very devoted to the father. They have 2 kids who are incredibly high achieving, but deep below the surface, they're in a very abusive household that they cannot tell anybody about. But because they're viewed as the model minority, they are the pillars of success. So it's really hard for them to deconstruct things below the surface because they are not talked about. I loved this book so intensely. I gave it a 5-star, and it's a memoir, and I really, ever since hearing about this one person who did not rate memoirs, I want to be like that. I want to not rate memoirs because it's kind of hard to read somebody's whole entire story and to just give it a number. But this was so beautifully written, so brilliantly laid out, that I just couldn't help but just at least acknowledge its brilliance and achievement by giving it just like a high, like I couldn't stop that. This book exposed me to the very depths of what it means to recognize what the model minority myth is in ways that I had not thought about. As somebody who's just aware of identity in the United States, and just as like a person with a complex identity, I have recognized the model minority myth as being unfair, but the way that she has detailed it was so moving, was so educational, it is very interesting. She starts off the book with talking about the origins of the model minority myth, and I kind of wanted to read what I had written down for these notes. Early in US and Canadian history, Asian immigrants were not allowed entry. In 1882, America enacted the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first significant race-based immigration ban, and it later extended to all of Asia. Then Canada passed a similar set of laws. Both countries were focused on white supremacy during the Cold War. Then America wanted to be branded a liberal democracy, which is where it gets, like the melting pot term from. So then the Hart-Celler Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, in that act, America established a new system of selection and favored immigrants with professional skills, high education levels, strong family ties, aka the model minority. And she goes into this saying that the model minority myth is perpetuated belonging as conditional. That stopped me in my tracks, because it really is, when you are put into a high pedestal of somebody who is high achieving, I feel like, for at least in my life, I've heard a lot of like, but you're not really like black. You're not really like black. You're not really like other like black people. You're not really blah, blah, blah. I feel like for the model minority, it's kind of the idea of good for you. Good on you. Look at you. High achieve, as long as I can achieve as much as I can, as long as I can stay above the average, then I can be on par with people who are even average. And I can be tolerated because I produce results and I'm impressive. And then, it is kind of also the idea that, like, whenever you do speak on the injustices of what it takes to be a model minority, and somebody kind of combats that with like, no, but you're rewarded for this, and that's a good thing. It should be a good thing. She also wrote, the privilege of few sets constraint among the many. It's like, why can't I just exist in this system regularly like other people do? I can't, because I have to stand out and be exceptional. I have to be the model minority in order to be respected, acknowledged. This book details not only American and Canadian history, but her own family history as it relates to what it took to grow up in a high achieving household that was at times really volatile and non-expressive. As somebody who started off in one career and then went to another. We see how she journeyed into writing and where she is today. She has an I think it's a younger brother um who also struggled with the model minority myth that really ended him up with really he ended up in a very interesting spot. Acknowledging with it is one thing, but coping with it is something else. So I think it was very interesting to see that, and I really, really appreciated all the things that she had to say about it. It was phenomenal. It was fantastic. If you are into this, oh my god, please give it a try because I loved it. So then we have Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. This is the book that I picked up like 5 times last year and just did not finish because it wasn't that I wasn't into it, I just could not focus, you know? I just feel like every time I had book fatigue from the last book whenever I would try to pick it up and finish it. This time I made it through. Okay, so I read this book physically. All of the nonfiction books that I read, I listened to them through audio, but then this one I read physically from the library. So this is a psychological thriller. A family man goes missing in a seemingly neglectful manner because he goes missing on a walk with his son. The story follows the family's discovery of what happened to the father, and along the way we find out a lot of things that he was not sharing with his family. This book is really interesting because I kind of struggled with the narrator is his daughter. The family is, I guess their kind of demographic is that they are a biracial family. The father is a white American, the mother is a Korean American, and then the children, of course, are mixed. And there's a set of twins, a girl and a boy. We hear from the girl side of the story. And she's a little bit like cynical and a little bit negative in a way that was kind of like I was not really used to. I feel like a lot of the narrators that I listen to are kind of either quirky or like even the ones that I feel like have a lot of grief, like they're witty, kind of humorous, but there is not really a lot of humor to this girl. But I did like what she had to say because at some moments she's so, I think, unironically funny in the way that she delivers things, you know? It's like you're so serious and you take yourself so serious that like even like the things that are just your observations, they do come off as like a little silly and a little funny. So it's from her perspective. They're going into figuring out what is going on with her father. So it's a set of twins, but then there also is the younger brother who has Angelman syndrome. Angelman syndrome, in this book, it felt like everything that the author was saying was real. Because I just have a feeling that the author probably has a relative or some relation to Angelman syndrome. Something outside of research that she did for this book. I feel like she has a real life connection to it because I feel like I can't quote everything she said in the book, but there were so many things that I felt like I was learning. Not only about Angelman syndrome, but like about how we treat people with Angelman syndrome, autism, learning disability, anything. I feel like she had such a strong tie because I have a brother who is cerebral palsy and autism, and it just is the things that she was saying just kind of felt like they were a little too on the nose of like, you didn't just look that up and just put it in this book. Like, I know you have experience, and that just made it very real to me. Like, the book is fiction, but the information seemed non-fiction and very real. There were also very interesting things that she mentioned about like the family is biracial living in America, but they did for a period of time live in Korea, live in South Korea with her mother. And there were so many things as somebody who is, you know, a Ugandan woman who is very Americanized and is living in America, like who grew up overseas. There were so many things that I related to in this book about how the children just did not feel at home in their home, about knowing certain things like within another language. I don't speak another language, but there's so many things about like that concept that I feel very familiar with, of experiencing another culture and knowing how to describe something of that culture but not being able to relate it to like American culture. And there's a lot of things in this book that I really did like. I gave this a 4-star. I thought it was great. I thought it genuinely it felt like a nonfiction in a very good way, not in a boring way, in a very like I want to be entertained and educated at the same time, which I think is a downfall of being somebody who is in Gen Z. Like I can't just be educated for the sake of education. I have to like have a little fun along the way. What the heck? But this book did it for me. So really, how bad is it? Anyway, yeah, so that is Happiness Falls. Okay, then we have Finding Me. Finding Me is Viola Davis's memoir. When I tell you, I will never recover. I will never recover. I'll never recover. It's not even a threat, it's just a reality. Like I read this through audio because it got suggested to me on Libby because I hadn't finished it before. And I'm going to be honest, when I first attempted to read this, it was just too dark for me. It was so heavy on my soul that I could not detach from Viola Davis. And I was just feeling too much from it. If you don't know, Viola Davis grew up in Central Falls, Rhode Island. Her father was a horse. Her father was what is that called? A groundskeeper, right? He dealt with like horses, but did not make a lot of money, and they were very impoverished, and there was a lot of kids. She has, I think, at least 2 or 3 sisters and a brother. Big family, came from impoverished background. The most trying, like everything that you can imagine that would happen to her happened to her. Like every piece of abuse. Like she was neglected, very impoverished. The authorities were not on her side. We just went through so many things. There was so much about this book where I was just like, I'm holding on because the only reason I'm holding on to this is because I know she becomes Viola Davis. Without her becoming Viola Davis, I can't do it. Like, I can't do it. So the first time that I read it, it was difficult. But the second time I was like, this is going to be an amazing, inspiring, hopeful book for me because I am aware of her current reality. And I know that it is leaps and bounds different than where she is now. And so I'm so happy that I pushed myself to read it again. I didn't read it again. I like read from where I left off, which was like 2 hours in or something. That was also another thing. It was like, I just was hoping that maybe 30 minutes would be tough of her like going through these things, and then it would just keep going, and you're like, this end. Anyway, it is just so fascinating to have read about her beginnings as a small impoverished child who seemed like they were being set up just to fail, who just had a moment of just saying a prayer and being like, God, if you're really real, take me out of this place. Please show me, show me how good life can get. Like she had one of those moments when she was like 8 and her father was beating her mother. And things didn't change for her immediately. It was like a couple of years later, she was in this acting group, like exposed to the scholarship to go take acting classes someplace, and she got to go take acting classes, and then from there she just got more and more into theater and experienced like the amazing amount of like all the emotions as it relates to theater of kind of starting out and being disappointed, and then of course going through years of like getting jobs and then not getting jobs, and finally like hitting it big, being a regular, and then continuing to like go up and up and up. And one of the most important things that she mentioned about this book was that was kind of the idea that like people think that my life is so glamorous, people think that acting is so glamorous, the industry is so glamorous. And then she said, I wish I could quote this correctly, and I'm not going to because it was audio, so I couldn't write anything down. But basically the idea is like people think that this industry is so glamorous, so beautiful, but 90% of actors' income is like $20,000 and above. A percentage of that like are stable. A percentage of that are famous. A percentage of that are you know what I mean? It's like kind of detailing the fact that yes, this is Viola Davis, but before Viola Davis became Viola Davis, before she found herself, which the book is called Finding Me, call back, she had to go through the things that you go through as a working actor, and for so long was just a working actor wanting to just get experience, and was finding herself and working through the trauma of her past. It was phenomenal. I am so happy that I stuck with it because it really made me, it like lit something up in me that made me feel like Viola Davis can become Viola Davis by going through all the things she went through. And it's shocking, the things that she went through. I'm not going to spoil anything because it just is, I want somebody to just read this and, you know, just take everything in. It's shocking that she was able to become who she became, that she found herself. Because like I don't know anybody that could do it in those conditions. I don't know anybody that could do it in those conditions. It's like, it feels impossible to even imagine. Anyway, those are all of the books that I read for January. I am currently in the middle of filming a how much can I read in a week? And I'm really hoping to get at least a book and a half. And one of the books is We're Here by David Nichols, the same person who wrote One Day. And then the other one is, I think it's No Bad Parts, which is a book that somebody recommended to me on one of my other channels, talking about psychotherapy and childhood trauma and working through that. So yeah, comment a book that you are fascinated with right now, or a book that you really liked. I would appreciate a comment or a recommendation wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever time of day it is. Thank you so much for even just watching this video. I appreciate you. And I hope you have a valuable morning, afternoon, or night.